Hey guys, I'm just about wrapping up a productive trip to Cebu where I addressed the Contact Center Association of the Philippines. The enthusiasm for AI in the contact center industry is very encouraging, and I'm looking forward to doing more work with our contact centers or BPOs as they navigate the transition into AI. I thought to record a version of the talk that I gave in the event so that everyone can see the messages that I left the event with. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy this and share it. So the title of my talk was Generative AI, Separating Facts from Fiction. Actually, this is a sequel of sorts to an earlier talk I gave about a month ago at the National AI Summit about the future of analytics and AI and its impact on society. If you were not there either, you can catch this and other talks on my YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com at DocLegot. Now, those who saw the talk will remember that I ended it with this chart. It's the Gobi State of Tech Talent in 2022 report, which plots several countries across two axes. The vertical axis here is how much technical talent as a percentage of the population in that country. And the x-axis here is how much venture capital in technology is being invested in that country as a percentage of GDP. Obviously, the implication is the more tech talent you have, the more investment you get. And the utopias of Singapore and Israel are the kind of the next Silicon Valleys, is the message here. Of course, the Philippines is at the lower left-hand quadrant of this chart, and that's both disappointing. But I've also had time to reflect on this chart. Because although the message is generally, talent and investment are related, there are some outliers. Like, for example, China, Indonesia, and India have about the same or less tech talent as a percentage of population that we do. And they're getting way more investment as a percentage of their GDP. While you have Canada, Switzerland, and the Netherlands who have way more tech talent, and they're doing just about the same amount as China and Indonesia. Remember, these are still percentages. So, yes, talent and investment are linked, but there seems to be something else here at play. And for the next few minutes, we're going to try to explore that. What's going on here? So this talk is divided into four parts. I'm going to first talk about fears, then about hopes, then about actions, and about dreams. Let's start with fears. So in the National AI Summit, I mentioned that AI scenarios have both a utopia and a dystopia. And it's interesting that most of the articles we read in the news tend to be on the negative side. If you look at the news, there's at least 9 common themes that you will hear about regarding AI. AI, obviously, there's a fear that AI will replace workers, job displacement. People are worried about cheating in school. People are worried about copyright, particularly in art. People are worried about Silicon Valley monopolies taking over the industry by default. People are worried about their data, like surveillance and discrimination. People are worried about misalignment. So this is the proverbial Terminator scenario. People are worried that AI will just further worsen the digital divide. And people are worried about fake news and the impact on the climate. Now, as I shared last time, for most of these issues, with the exception of the last two, there doesn't seem to be kind of a reversal or an inverse situation for disinformation and climate. As of this recording, I have not encountered an AI reliable enough to detect fake news, nor AI that successfully predicts or detects AI generated work. There are a couple out there, but they're not 100% or even close. And that's difficult for journalists who are now grappling with this deluge of fake news while they're doing their work, in an analog way. And as for climate, the continued use of AI promotes carbon footprint, like the use of GPUs, data centers. This suck up a lot of power and also produce pollution. And until such time we can come up with better chips, perhaps, or maybe the more likely scenario is We figure out how to deploy smaller models that are about as effective as big models, because to train the existing large language models takes tremendous resources. We're going to have to grapple with this issue on the impact on the climate. But for the other scenarios, things don't need to look so bleak. So, for example, you can talk about job losses, but equally, you can also talk about job creation. If you're not obsessing about cheating, we should be talking about how large language models, generative AI can make education more efficient. Instead of copyright, we can talk about creativity, how this unlocks creativity across the board. People who wouldn't otherwise be producing art or producing written work can now do it with AI. Instead of monopolies, we can talk about how we can democratize innovation. AI was built on the open source movement over the past years. So why can't that be more of the case as we go forward? Instead of surveillance, AI can be used to actually protect privacy. Differential privacy is a topic rarely explored, and generative AI can mask identities while allowing people to continue to analyze the characteristics of data. Instead of Terminator, why don't we talk about Star Trek? How AI can enhance our productivity by not just 10x, maybe 100x, maybe 1000x. Instead of the digital divide, we should look at how AI can give us more convenience and personalized choices. So if you look at it from this perspective, the situation in AI seems more balanced. It's not all doom and gloom. Some can be doom, some can be gloom, and some can be positive. And that's how I want to end the first part of this talk. Professor Melanie Mitchell of Santa Fe Institute was recently in the Monk debates about, the doomer scenarios, along with Joshua Bengio, Max Tegmark, and Jan LeCun. And she actually, I agree with her when she says sensationalist claims about AI actually deflect attention from more immediate risks and might result in blocking the potential benefits that we could reap from technological progress. So if we keep scaring ourselves with the doom and gloom, and I'm not saying we ignore it, certainly these need to be discussed, and I have discussed it in other fora. But we can also actually scare ourselves into analysis paralysis, and that's dangerous. So I want to talk about hopes. In a recent Microsoft employee survey, they found that about half of their workforce are actually worried about job replacement. But 7 out of 10 Microsoft employees would happily delegate work to AI if it can reduce their workload. I mean, let's face it, ever since the pandemic, more and more we've been suffering from burnout because work from home doesn't mean less work. Actually, more likely means more work. And people are coping with burnout. So the survey showed that people were more excited about eliminating burnout than eliminating jobs. 7 out of 10 were comfortable using AI for creativity. And 8 out of 10 were looking for more tools that can help them with otherwise mundane tasks. So that's looking more positive than people think. In a separate study by MIT, where they observed a call center adopt ChatGPT over a period, they found that customer support actually became 14% more productive with the introduction of ChatGPT. They saw improved job performance, improved customer satisfaction, reduced turnover. So this is very encouraging because compared to impressions that the implementation of generative AI would decimate jobs, we're seeing how the integration of AI within existing workflows can actually improve things. There's actually further nuance to this study where, although broadly speaking, they experienced a gain of about 14% in productivity, they found that the gains were not evenly distributed. So those less skilled or less experienced workers had more performance gains compared to the ones who were already doing well. And they said this is likely because the recommendations AI were giving them were already modeled on the performance of the better agents. So what we're seeing here is AI has this effect of leveling off the playing field. Everybody now becomes a super agent. Either you're a super agent already or you become a super agent augmented by AI. So this is also very encouraging because it helps with onboarding talent, it helps with developing talent, but it could have implications from a compensation structure standpoint where you now need to find other avenues. Because if performing well is the norm, you now need to find other ways of differentiating top performers. And this brings me to this concept of RPA, or robotic process automation, has been around for a while. But the opportunity here is you take standard RPA processes and technologies and integrate them with generative models. It actually can lower the barrier to the adoption of automation because you don't really need programmers to use large language models. While RPA tools tend to, still be very esoteric and specific. So the combination of the two is good for optimizing workflows and automating tasks, but lowering the barrier to entry. And since RPA tends to be static unless you keep updating your workflow from time to time, generative models can learn, from existing transactions. So they get smarter over time and they start mimicking individual level problem solving. So this new trend towards GPA instead of RPA is really a trend to watch because more and more call centers and BPOs will be forced to adopt something close to GPA to become competitive in this AI-driven world. Here's an example which was published by Thinking Machines. Recently, they saw that generative AI is actually successful in replicating the results of sentiment analysis that they would have otherwise spent maybe days building in terms of workflows. So those who are, used to NLP, natural language processing, to do sentiment analysis involves many steps. You need to cleanse the data, you need to remove stop words, you need to do lemmatization, stemming, and all these things so that you can train an algorithm that can pick up positive and negative signals. While a single prompt with a chatbot can accomplish the same task. So can you imagine the productivity saved from all of that? That doesn't mean data scientists or analysts who develop these tools will be out of jobs, but in terms of their ability to be more productive. The effort shifts from model development towards model execution, towards workflows and engineering. And that's, I think, generally a positive development. Okay, so we've seen the fears, we've seen the hopes. What do we need to do? What are the actions? So this is where I go back to kind of my usual intro slide about the difference between discriminative and generative AI. So discriminative AI is AI that interprets data. It's the AI most of us have been used to for some time. And generative AI is AI that generates data. So a discriminative AI, you feed it a picture of a cat, you can tell if it's a cat or not. While generative AI, you can feed it a picture of a cat or you prompt it with cat and it produces more cats. So these are two different use cases. They actually work well together. One is not better than the other. And rather interestingly, they mimic kind of the traditional view of the human brain. So discriminative AI is perception or the left brain, while generative AI is the creativity, which is the right brain. And those, companies that perceive and create, that's pretty much the nature of all types of white collar work. So the use of AI in companies, this is the game changer that I was talking about. Of course, we now need to differentiate when AI should come in. I've talked about this in past talks. We can divide tasks based on their complexity or how much data you need to consume to make a decision, and their certainty. What kind of decision do you want? So low uncertainty decisions and low complexity decisions are the perfect candidate for automation. So use RPA or GPA because the outcomes are fairly known and you don't have to spend too much time getting data. Now, of course, there's the uncertain but low complexity tasks. This is where humans will probably do better. relying on gut feel or experience, or maybe there isn't enough data yet to do any automation, then yeah, you put humans there. And then over time, as you onboard more experience, they can be candidates for automation in the future. Now, the high complexity column is where most people are thrown off, because this is where you need to ingest a huge amount of data. But again, sometimes the situation varies. Like for low uncertainty decisions with high complexity data, perfect for business analytics. So an example here would be credit scoring, my favorite example. You need to ingest a lot of data, like a bank would look at demographics, payment behavior, relationships, occupations, etc. But the outcome is still fairly defined. You approve or decline the application, or you decide how much to lend. So this is where humans can take the lead, but backed by AI, usually discriminative AI, to provide the basis for the decision making. While the high uncertainty and the high complexity quadrant, this is the new area where I think generative AI is best suited. This is where you need to explore a huge space of possibilities and decisions, but you don't know which one is the best. And it's huge because it's also involving a lot of data points. So things like creativity, planning, strategy, scenarios, art, simulations, which actually used to be handled by analytics. I think this should now be given to generative AI. So AI takes the lead in scrutinizing all of the decision space or latent space. But then humans set the parameters. So humans are still holding the leash while you let AI do its task. That's what I think the emerging framework is. And I think part of it is this, I think bifurcation, I call it, between builders and users of AI. So we're used to people building AI, people who understand math, understand code, do some, high level structure, solution design, software development, basically, data science. And up until recently, they were also the users of the tool. But now with the advent of chatbots powered by AI, we can now provide users of AI the ability to do problem solving, scenario analysis, planning without even writing code, without even looking at math. And it's not to say code and math are not important, but now they're in different buckets. And like I like using the automotive industry as a parallel. Just because you replace spark plugs and tune the car doesn't mean you're the one driving the car. And the other way around. Just because you can be a Formula One driver and you don't know how to change tires. So building and using are two different categories of occupation in cars, and that can be the same as well for AI. Which brings me to what I would say would be the key capabilities for an AI-powered call center. And this is not 5 different software packages that you need to buy. I would rather people think of this as like high-level capabilities. And then you build your digital strategy around each of them. I'm going to talk about agile data, behavioral data, collaborative innovation, analytical applications, and autonomous decision-making. I mentioned this in my talk on digital transformation. So what do these mean? Agile data means a call center should be able to retrieve any data quickly without effort, without friction. About as easy as writing a search on Google. And it sounds deceptively simple, but most companies actually haven't gotten to this level of agility. It takes them time, or maybe they have an analytics team, and you need to fill up some request form. These are all barriers to agility. And my challenge to call centers is, how do you become more agile about information? Behavior means, call centers are already good at counting things. So relative to most other industries, call centers are actually surprisingly metricized and structured. They have metrics for everything. Talk time, handle time, resolution rate, abandon rate. But these are all just essentially counting things. So I have no doubt call centers know how to count. But explaining why those trends happen, that's the behavior. And that requires a bit more analysis. You need to be able to connect different types of data points, looking at, over time, across cohorts. And analytics does this But with AI, you can speed this up. You can speed up the analysis, just like the sentiment analysis earlier. Collaborative innovation is about driving innovation from all over the organization. Currently, I would imagine for most call centers, either the innovation comes from their clients from the other countries offshoring to the Philippines, or it's held at a very high level when you have this senior elite group, maybe a think tank or a consultant, and they're the ones who do process changes and transformation changes. Now, by providing generative AI across the board, you actually give every employee in the company the ability to innovate because they can generate ideas on the fly. And imagine an entire company that's able to innovate on the fly. That doesn't mean you just keep changing things right and left, but the idea generation can now be from everywhere. The latter two are like probably closest to actual technologies, more than just philosophies, like analytical applications. The best example here is Waze. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to use Waze, but there's a lot of math that happens with Waze. You just need to tell Waze, I need to go from point A to B. And, the app does it. So what kind of apps are you deploying in a call center that can allow non-technical people to do rather technical work? And I think this is the perfect avenue for generative AI because it can, process text, it can generate content, can analyze content. So applications built on, generative AI would be a game changer. And finally, the automation piece. It's not about eliminating jobs as much as it is delegating low-level decision-making to machines so that you can use the human headcount for more complexity. So these are the 5, I would say, strategies. In no particular order, a call center can apply one or more in any order they want. But the idea is to go beyond just the academic definitions of AI and about how AI ought to be used in the organization. Okay, so I want to end this talk with a discussion on dreams because as we saw earlier, I think there's more to this chart than meets the eye. And I want to contextualize this by, using something we're very familiar with, which is the world map. This is something we've known since childhood, geography and all that. But what if I told you that this map is actually wrong? That this map is actually distorted? So this world map is actually the handiwork of a fellow named Gerard Mercator back in the 16th century. And Mercator devised this method of displaying the countries that are on a globe, sorry, flat earthers, and finding a way of, putting them on a flat 2x2 map. So the result of this is actually the map as we know it, but the distortion is countries near the equator tend to look squished, while the countries that are kind of in the poles get blown up. So one of the best ways to appreciate this would be a website called thetruesize.com, which allows you to move countries around the map to see how they would get distorted by the Mercator projection. The other benefit of using the TrueSize is it actually allows you to compare the actual sizes of countries with each other. And it's really one of my favorite pastimes. I want to share some of those plots to you right now. For example, this is Hong Kong, the entire country of Hong Kong and Singapore, or rather District of China, against Manila. So Singapore is roughly the size of NCR. It's an entire country the size of our city. And Hong Kong is about the size of Manila plus Bulacan. I should give you some, reason for pause about the relative sizes of countries. You see, we consider Singapore and Hong Kong to be first world, but they're no larger than our capital city in the Philippines. This is the countries of Taiwan, Ireland, and Korea, which are just about the size of northern Luzon, if you think about it. And we look very highly on these countries, for example. This is the event is called Contact Island, so I thought of talking about some islands in the Visayas. So Lebanon is about half the size of Palawan. Palestine is about the size of Mindoro. Kosovo is about the size of Panay. Qatar is just the size of Negros, Oriental and Occidental. And Brunei is just a little larger than Bohol. And yet, when we think of countries like Qatar, for example, very rich country, would we think that it's just the size of one of our islands in the Visayas? Mindanao, as a landmass, is roughly the breadth of Austria or the United Arab Emirates or Hungary. These are really big, European, Middle Eastern countries. And yet, they're just basically 1/3 of our archipelago. So a few days ago, we all celebrated according to everyone, the stunning and surprising win of the Philippines in the FIFA World Cup women's football. And I'm one with the country in congratulating our women's team for doing this. When I saw this shared on LinkedIn, there was actually a comment. I didn't catch the screenshot anymore, but it went something like, the little country that could, talking about the Philippines, obviously. I'm sure there wasn't any malice intended with this comment, but actually, if we go back to the true size, Philippines is roughly the length of New Zealand, plus plus. We're larger than the United Kingdom. We're about the same size as Japan. And our populations are bigger than any of these countries. Japan, roughly equal, about 100 million people in Japan, just like the Philippines. But the point I'm trying to make here is the Philippines geographically is not a small place. We were just conditioned, perhaps from birth, to think of ourselves as small. And that's something worth reflecting on. If you go back to the utopia of Singapore and Israel, Israel is just a slice of Luzon, and Singapore is, again, just the size of Metro Manila. So we have to start reflecting on exactly what kind of potential the Philippines has to be a contender. And I'm just using geography as a basis. But even if we look at population of Israel and Singapore, about 5 and 9 million. In 2021, we published a labor market intelligence report sponsored by PBED for the AAP. And one of the statistics there is to look at, as a proxy, how many people were interested in AI based on Facebook statistics. And at that time, this is 2021, there were more people interested in AI in the Philippines than there are people in Singapore, and about 2/3 the people of Israel. In other words, we keep underestimating the fact that we have a lot of people in the Philippines. And then I want to connect this with our earlier discussion on AI, about creating users of AI. Code is a big barrier to adoption, to be a builder. But to be a user of AI, you just need to speak English and write English. And I can imagine these 6.4 million across the Philippines, or the 2.5 million between the NCR and Region 4A, are probably people who can write English. So I want to close with this. There's talk about AI becoming sentient or independent. I don't think AI really cares what we think at the moment. It just does what we prompt it to do. I think the bigger gap that we need to change is our mindset about thinking small. Philippines is not small. Philippines is big. And just like in women's soccer, we can be a contender in many other fields if we decide to. So when we're ready to stop thinking small and start acting big, AI will act accordingly. So again, I want to close this with, a shout out. For those who want to get a copy of this presentation, please fill up my survey, bit.ly/AI_fact_fiction. And please follow me, or ask your kids to follow me if they're on TikTok. I'm also on Instagram, of course, on YouTube, and Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I've been active on social media for going on 3 months, going on 4. And the idea is to get more people talking about artificial intelligence. And I also have an open invitation for any company. If you need a 1-hour briefing, if you like this talk or something similar, please contact me via social or support@zerolytics.com. You can do it live, or we'll do it live, either face-to-face or via virtual, via Zoom. These talks are actually uploaded into YouTube. So if you want to see more content like this, please go to my YouTube channel, like and subscribe. And lastly, I've been announcing this already. We're about to launch capacity building programs for AI for companies and individuals. We will be doing a 3-day face-to-face innovation camp, incorporating design thinking with artificial intelligence. This is for companies or individuals who want to know how to ideate use cases. It takes more than just technical knowledge to create use cases for AI. So the innovation camp will equip anyone to be able to come up with product services or strategies based on AI. Also going to be offering a 1-day face-to-face course on strategic planning using AI. And for those on the go, we'll be launching some 3-hour boot camps online to take everyone through the basics of prompt engineering, which is the core skill for users of AI. It's not just about asking questions of, ChatGPT. It's about how do you structure your prompts to get the best outcome. We'll be doing that very shortly. So that was the talk I gave in the Contact Islands event in CCAP. I hope you found this interesting. And yeah, I'll be uploading this to YouTube and Facebook so everyone can share it. In the meantime, hope you have a good weekend ahead of you. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next talk.